Can I have your attention, please? We've got a special guest here with us in the Bristol Motor Speedway Media Center. It's our kind of Sunday inside look, if you will, NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. And all right, got you burned strong there. And really pleased, appreciative of having former NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion Brad Keselowski. He's the driver of the number 2 Miller Lite Ford for Team Penske. And Brad, thank you for coming in. And certainly you've got a good starting position for today's race. You've won here before at Bristol. You've won here this year, or you've won on the circuit this year. So you're locked into that chase. But I'm sure you'd like to get some of those bonus points and get you another trophy here this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, Kerry. And I guess first off, I'd start by saying, these are kind of an interesting new idea or concept. So we're glad for all the media that showed up today for the race. But I'm also glad to be here this morning and try to at least give you something a little bit cool to talk about. I know the weather isn't exactly where we want it to be, but it's just a matter of time before that rolls out, hopefully soon. But I'm glad to be here, Bristol. This is a great track for me personally. I love the challenge that is Bristol. This is a in-your-face racetrack. And we've had our practice sessions yesterday and on Friday. And after the practice session yesterday, I got out of the car and went and talked to my teammate, Joey Logano. And the first thing we did was both look at each other and yell expletive, because we're tired. You literally, with this track the way it is right now, you drive every lap as hard as you can, and it's such a challenge because this track was really changed dramatically about 3 years ago when it got ground on the top lane, and what happened that kind of changed the track there is it smoothened out the concrete surface in that one particular spot, and it lost a little bit of banking, which the really smart guys with degrees would tell you that should make that part of the track slower. But the exact opposite happened. When the track got that smooth patch on the very top lane of the racetrack, it reacted to the Goodyear rubber, or reacts, I should say, time over time, to where it creates this very high grip spot, and it's a very narrow high grip spot. So once that part of the track takes rubber, the cars all move up there because there's so much more grip. And in yesterday's practice, we saw that spot was probably worth 2 or 3 tenths of speed, which in this sport is dramatic. But kind of the caveat that goes with that makes it such a challenge is that grip spot is maybe 2 foot wide at best, and if you go below it by a couple inches, you're 2 or 3 tenths off the pace, and your crew chief and team's yelling at you to get up on the wheel. And if you go over it by an inch or two, you hit the debris and marls and essentially knock the wall down. So that challenge means that you have to drive the car very hard with a lot of trust and a lot of confidence, knowing that when you're in traffic and you hit dirty spots in air or whatever it might be, and miss that spot by just the smallest amount, you're going to hit the wall, and you're going to ruin your day. So that's what 500 laps of Bristol is going to demand from you today. It's going to demand perfection. It's going to demand that you drive your car as hard as you can up against the wall and to its limit, all 500 laps, or all the green flag laps at least. And it's quite a challenge. So one that I embrace and I really enjoy about this track, and part of why I look forward to coming here.
Questions now for Brad. If you have one, raise your hand. Questions for Brad Keselowski. Let's go here. Bob, Kelly, and then Stan.
Bob Hawkers, ESPN. Going back to Talladega in a couple of weeks, can you talk about the mindset of you? Last time you were there, you had to win to advance. Now, when you've got to win, you're in the chase. I mean, do you race that race any differently in May than you did last October? Risk versus reward is very
yeah.
different.
It is and it isn't. I feel like with having a win under my belt that, if you wreck out, you wreck out. And that's really the risk at Talladega is wrecking out. And for me, last fall, wrecking out meant nothing, essentially. I had to win. I don't have to win going to Talladega this time, but I want to win. But the kind of risk is still very small when you already have a win, because we know we're not going to have to points race our way into the chase. So that puts me in a very similar position. And then, of course, knowing that both of our cars in Daytona were very strong, Joey Logano winning the 500, that kind of enters your mindset as well from the standpoint of knowing you have a great car. And if you make a risky move, you hope that your car is strong enough to recover from it. So the mentality isn't much different, but maybe just that little bit of desperation is gone, if anything.
Let's go with Kelly and then Stan.
Kelly Crandall from PopularSpeed.com. Brad, you just described in detail how the racing has changed here in terms of where the groove is, where the line is, but you also mentioned how tired you are now when you get out of the race car. How much has, because this track has changed through so much over the years, how has it changed from a mental and perhaps physical standpoint of what you guys are doing in these race cars now?
Yeah, it's more demanding, and I would tell anyone, and I would tell this group, that on a perfect day, I feel like the coordination and the physical conditioning it takes to be a race car driver is probably on par with the capabilities of an 8-year-old. The problem is there's very few perfect days. And I would kind of relay that back to this time I was at Texas Motor Speedway and did a ride-along with Michael Irvin, the wide receiver for the Cowboys. And we ran 2 or 3 laps, I think, and we got out, and he threw up all over and passed out and sat on the ground. And, here's a guy who's a football player, arguably the most physically fit athletes probably on the planet, at least very well balanced in that sense. And he passed out in a race car. And the reason for that is very simple. The mental challenge that it takes to be a race car driver affects the physical challenge. Because when the demands on your body or the demands on your mind get, elevated, as they do here at Bristol, you do things that you shouldn't do that make the physical challenge harder. You hold your breath, you grab the steering wheel way harder than you need to grab it, you tighten up inside the car, and next thing you know, you're extremely fatigued, no matter what conditioning level you have. I don't care if you're Shaq. It doesn't matter, because the mental side of your body is telling yourself, oh crap, and it's going to use all the strength you have no matter what your strength limits are. So kind of mastering the mental side as a race car driver is probably the bigger challenge to almost every track we go to. Bristol is one of the few exceptions to that. Bristol is one of those tracks where the physical demands are probably at their highest, specific to this configuration of Bristol with this car and this grip level and tire. So Bristol is one of the few exceptions to that where, I feel like even having a very solid and strong mental approach, almost every driver will leave here very fatigued.
Let's go to Kelly, Stan, and then Kenny, and then we'll go to the press box. Kelly, you just got your question. Yes, I'm sorry. Stan,
Okay.
Kenny,
right.
press box.
Stan Creekmore with RPMTonight.com. Brad, you kind of just answered a little bit of that question that I had, but nevertheless, as extremely demanding both physically and mentally as this track is, at the same time, do you also wish there was more of these styles of tracks on the circuit?
Yeah, absolutely, Stan. It was a few years ago. I remember, I think it was Dale Jr. Someone tweeted as he was flying in and he flew over the track that, 10, 15 years ago when we had the big track boom, so to speak, why didn't anyone ever look at Bristol and say we need to build another one of these? Because it's a very special place. And I think you get that feeling every time you come here when you walk in, and you get that feeling when you pull out on the racetrack too. There's no track I've ever ran that is comparable to Bristol. It's a unique challenge, and I think it's really a lot of what this sport was made of was the unique challenge of short tracks, and Bristol takes that to another degree, which I think is part of its staying power and why it's lasted so long in the sport when a lot of the short tracks haven't.
Let's go over here to far left to Kenny, then we'll go to the press box. Go ahead, Kenny.
Kenny Bruce from NASCAR.com. Brad, you guys have spent 2 days on the track practicing, qualifying, and everything. Now with the rain, is any of that stuff relevant? How much do you anticipate it's going to be different when you do get out there?
Yeah, it'll take about 50 to 100 laps for the track to condition into what I was kind of speaking of earlier. And what you'll see is the cars will all run the bottom of the track probably for about 50 laps. And start to move their way up to the middle and high lanes after that. And as soon as the track surface heats up from the cars, especially the friction running over them, the track surface will heat up to, about 110, 120 degrees, and that'll be a trigger point for the track to take rubber. And when that happens and it hits that spot over at the top of both corners, you'll see that grip patch develop, and the track will literally gain probably 2 or 3 tenths of speed. The speeds will go up, and you'll see everyone running the top like we were at the end of final practice. So you're going to see those trigger points in the race as the track surface heats up and it takes and absorbs the rubber into it. But it will happen. It'll just, instead of being 10 or 20 laps into the race, as it would have been if there was no rain, it might take 100, but from there we'll be back to where we were.
We're going to take about 3 more questions. Let's go press box. Here you had one. Go ahead.
Chris Knight, catchfence.com. Brad, I was just curious. You said you were doing some scouting yesterday for Team Brad Keselowski Racing. Do you like what you saw in the Xfinity Series or the Canaan Series, and was this for 15 or 16?
Well, we're in a very good spot with the truck program. I've got Tyler Reddick right now who is really just knocking it out of the ballpark. I feel very fortunate to have him as part of the team, leading the points, and got a race win under his belt. But certainly, when you have 18, 19, 20-year-old drivers, which I'm very fortunate to have with that program, that whenever they have success, it's kind of bittersweet because you enjoy the success, but they're not going to stay very long. And with that in mind, you kind of need to have some plans for the future. And, so for me, that means trying to be prepared, trying to do your homework, and trying to understand the driver landscape and who's kind of the next guy that makes sense to fit into our program. So, for us, we'll do a lot of watching and scouting over the next 6 months, knowing that we'll probably have at least one opening for our program next year, and try to be prepared to make the most of those opportunities.
2 more questions. Let's come downstairs. Deb has one, and then I think a gentleman over to the far right has one. Then we'll let Brad go. Go ahead.
Brad, Deb Williams, RacingToday.com. Friday, Jimmy Johnson was in here, and he was talking about the technology that's available on this new electronic dash that's being tested. Do you feel that we have to be careful to limit the technology that's available in the cockpit so that the focus stays on a driver's talent rather than the technology available to that driver?
Yeah, that's always a balance. I think as far as technology is concerned, it's a double-edged sword. We certainly need a level of technology if we're going to engage our fan base, especially the next generation. So I think we have to have a balance between that and exactly what you said. We can't allow computers to drive the race cars, or this becomes more of a chess match than a race. So in that sense, we have to keep that balanced. That's a constant challenge that NASCAR has when they make rules or design or implement new ideas, and so we kind of have to trust them to find that balance for us. That's their job, right? but certainly it's something that we're all kind of aware of. It's important to find that right spot, that sweet spot.
Final question, far right. Go ahead, sir.
Brad, CJ Williver, Fox Sports. Of course, hats off to Bristol and NASCAR for the additional safety measures that they've put in place here. But some of the drivers, since we got here, have been talking about that shortens the racing surface, and that is definitely going to affect how drivers run and possibly the outcome here over the weekend. So what do you think as far as the changes, and how do you plan to compensate for the smaller surface?
Well, I imagine they must have said that before they got on track Friday, because when I got on the track, I couldn't even tell a difference. So maybe I'm not that perceptive, but I don't see where it's made a difference as of now. Maybe it will when we get to racing, but I find that very doubtful. And I would say that at this point, I'm nothing but extremely appreciative for the track and tracks that have taken those steps.
Hey, Brad, thanks for coming in this morning. Good luck today. Good luck the rest of the
Thank you.
season. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here.